The morning my granddaughter pressed record on her phone under the Thanksgiving table, I was passing the cranberry sauce and pretending I didn't know my own daughter was about to declare me incompetent in front of 22 people. I'm 79 years old. I taught fourth grade for 31 years at the same elementary school in Bristol, Connecticut. I still drive myself to the dentist. I still balance my checkbook by hand because I never trusted those banking apps. I still remember the phone number of the boy who sat behind me in algebra in 1962, and his name was Donnie McAfee, and he had a chipped front tooth from a baseball that hit him in the second grade. My memory works. My mind works. My hands work, even with the arthritis that makes my coffee cup feel heavier than it should some mornings. But according to my own daughter, I've been slipping for months. Forgetting things. Leaving the stove on. Wandering. None of it was true. Not one word. Her name is Tabitha. She's 51. She's a real estate broker in Hartford, married to a dentist named Royce, and they have 3 children who only call me when their mother makes them. I raised her by myself for almost 10 years after my husband Garrett died of a heart attack at 46. I worked summers tutoring rich kids in Avon to pay for her braces and her dance lessons and the camp she went to in Maine for 6 summers in a row. I never once asked her father's family for help, even when his sister offered, because Garrett had hated owing anyone anything and I wanted to honor that. I tell you this so you understand. I built her piece by piece, year by year, and I was proud of what I made. Until that Thanksgiving. The dinner was at my house, like always. It's a 4-bedroom colonial on Birchwood Lane that Garrett and I bought in 1972 for $42,000, and now Zillow tells me it's worth somewhere around $600,000. I'd cooked the turkey since 5 in the morning. My granddaughter Phoebe came over at noon to help with the pies. She's 23, a year out of nursing school at UConn, working night shifts at St. Francis. She's the only one of my grandchildren who remembers my birthday without a reminder from her mother. Every year she sends a card, and every year there's a $5 bill inside, just like I used to send her when she was little. It became our joke. The $5 bill that never grew up. By 3 in the afternoon, the house was full. My nephew Branwell and his wife, my sister Dorinda from Worcester, 82, and sharper than most 30-year-olds I know. Tabitha, Royce, their 3 kids. A few cousins and some friends Tabitha had invited without asking me, which she did every year. I'd long stopped pointing it out. I noticed something was off when Royce wouldn't make eye contact with me at the cheese board. He kept looking at his shoes. Royce is the kind of man who loves to talk, especially about himself. And the sudden silence around him felt loud. Tabitha was working the room, refilling glasses, laughing too hard at jokes that weren't funny. There was a tightness in the way she moved. Phoebe noticed too. She came up to me in the kitchen while I was checking on the green beans, and she said, "Real quiet, Grandma? Something weird is going on." I told her not to worry. I told her mother was probably just tired. But I knew, I'd known since the week before when Tabitha had called me on a Sunday and asked if I'd been feeling like myself lately. She asked it 3 times in different ways. I'd hung up the phone and stood in the kitchen for a long time, looking at the calendar on the fridge, trying to figure out what I'd missed. I hadn't missed anything. She was the one constructing it. We sat down to dinner at 4:15, 22 of us around the table, with the kids' table in the den. I said the same grace I've said for 40 years, the one Garrett's mother taught me, about gratitude and the hands that prepared the meal. Tabitha squeezed my hand at the end of it, and I almost let myself believe everything was fine. She waited until the plates were full and the wine was poured. She waited until her sister-in-law Lonnie had told her boring story about the cruise to Bermuda. She waited until I'd just lifted my fork. Then she stood up, wine glass in her hand. Royce reached up and touched her elbow, and I couldn't tell if he was steadying her or trying to stop her. "Before we eat," she said, "I want to say something. Family. We need to talk about Mom." I set my fork down. The whole table got quiet in that way only a long table can. Some of you have noticed, Tabitha said, that Mom hasn't been herself. She's been forgetting things. Leaving the stove on. Last month, she got lost driving home from the grocery store and called me from a parking lot in New Britain crying. That never happened, not one piece of it. I'd never called her crying from a parking lot in my entire adult life. We took her to a specialist last week, she said, and the doctor confirmed what I've been afraid of, early-stage dementia. It's progressing fast, and as much as it breaks my heart, we have to start making decisions now before she can't make them with us. I looked across the table at Phoebe. She was already looking at me. Her phone was on her lap, screen down, but I saw the red light. The little red light from her recording app. She'd started it before her mother stood up. I love that girl. God, I love that girl. God, I love that girl. Tabitha kept going. I've spoken with Mom's doctor. I've consulted with 2 attorneys. We've drawn up a guardianship petition. I'd never want to do this without family support, but the situation is urgent. Mom needs care, real care, and the house, the finances. It's all becoming too much for her. My sister Dorinda put her napkin down very slowly. She looked at me. She didn't say anything. She just looked. What doctor? I asked. My voice came out steadier than I expected. Tabitha tilted her head like she was speaking to a confused child. Mom, we talked about this. Dr. Halberstam in West Hartford, you came with me 3 weeks ago. Remember the long drive? You said you didn't recognize the highway? I have never been to a Dr. Halberstam. I have never been to West Hartford with my daughter for any reason in the last 5 years. The drive she was describing, the highway I supposedly didn't recognize, was a complete fabrication. But here's what stunned me. Half the table was nodding. They were already nodding. She'd been working on them for weeks, maybe months. The whispers, the worried phone calls, the carefully timed concern. Lonnie was already dabbing her eye with a napkin. My nephew Branwell was looking at me with what I can only describe as condescending pity. Tabitha, I said, I'd like you to sit down. Mom, please. Sit down. She didn't sit. She kept standing, holding her wine glass. Her face arranged into the perfect expression of a daughter doing the hardest thing she'd ever done. I've seen that expression before. I saw it on her face when she was 9 and broke my mother's good vase and tried to blame it on the dog. Has anyone here, I said, looking around the table, actually seen me forget anything? Anything at all? Has anyone watched me leave a stove on, get lost, miss an appointment in the last year? Show of hands. No hands went up. Phoebe's didn't go up either, but her eyes were wet. Mom, this is exactly what I was worried about, Tabitha said, very gently. Denial is a classic symptom. The doctor said, What's the doctor's first name? I said. She blinked. What's Dr. Halberstam's first name? You said I went to him 3 weeks ago. What's his first name? A pause. Half a second too long. Edward, she said. You just made that up, I said. You just invented a name. There is no Dr. Halberstam. I have never been to West Hartford with you. I have never been examined by anyone for dementia because there's nothing wrong with my mind and you know it. The table started to shift. Not toward me, not yet. Just shift. The certainty was cracking. Royce stood up then. Now, you Lily, with respect. Don't you Lily me, Royce. Sit down. You are a guest in my house and you will sit down. He sat down. Tabitha's eyes were welling. She does that. She's always been able to cry on demand since she was about 4 years old. Mom, this isn't easy for any of us. I'm trying to protect you. I'm trying to do this with love. Phoebe, I said, would you stand up, please? Phoebe looked terrified, but she stood up. She brought her phone with her. Phoebe, sweetheart, would you please play the recording? Tabitha's face went the color of old milk. What recording? She said. The one your daughter made. The one she started before you stood up. Because she's smarter than you think, Tabitha. Because she's been calling me twice a week for 3 years, and she would know if my mind was going. Because she trusts what she sees with her own eyes more than what her mother whispers in her ear. Phoebe was shaking, but she pressed play. And Tabitha's voice came out of that little iPhone, tinny and clear, saying every word she'd just said in front of God and Branwell and the cousins from Springfield. I let it play for about 30 seconds. Then I held up my hand and Phoebe stopped it. "Now, Tabitha," I said, "tell everyone here, in front of your husband and your children and your aunt and your cousins, the real name of the doctor I supposedly saw, and the real date, and give us the address of the office, and tell us why, when I called my own physician, Dr. Cousin Pemberton, this morning to ask if anyone had requested my records, she told me you'd called twice in October pretending to be me and asking for a referral to a neurologist she has never heard of. I'd called Dr. Pemberton 3 days earlier. I'd had a feeling. The receptionist Margie had told me everything. Tabitha had used my date of birth. She'd used my Medicare number. She'd asked very specific questions about what would qualify a patient for a dementia diagnosis. Margie had recognized the voice and called me at home that same afternoon. We've known each other for 16 years. The room was very, very quiet. Tabitha's wine glass was shaking in her hand. A drop of Merlot landed on the white tablecloth. "That's identity fraud, Tabitha," I said. "That's a federal crime." She set the glass down. Her hand was trembling. "And the guardianship petition," I said. "The one you supposedly already drawn up. I'd love to see it. I'd love for everyone here to see the document where my own daughter declared me legally incompetent without my knowledge or consent." She didn't answer. She was looking at the floor. My sister Dorinda stood up. 82 years old, 4'11" on a tall day, and she stood up and she said, "Tabitha Lynn, you sit down right now." Tabitha sat. I didn't get angry. I didn't yell. I picked up my fork. I cut a small piece of turkey. I chewed it. The whole table watched me eat. And then I said, "We're going to finish this dinner. We're going to be civilized. Tomorrow morning, my daughter and I are going to have a long conversation, with my attorney present. Anyone who wants to leave is welcome to leave. Anyone who wants to stay, please pass the gravy." Nobody left. Nobody talked much either, but they ate. After everyone had gone home, I sat at the kitchen table with Phoebe. She'd helped me clean up, refusing to leave even when her father had texted her 4 times. The dishwasher was running. The leftover turkey was in foil. The candles were burned down to stubs. "Grandma," she said, "I'm so sorry." "You don't have anything to apologize for, sweetheart." I should have told you what she was saying. She'd been calling me, asking weird questions about whether you seemed confused on the phone, whether I'd noticed anything strange. I told her no. I told her you were sharper than me, but I didn't tell you. I should have told you. "You did tell me," I said. "You told me tonight." She started to cry. Not the way her mother cries, real crying. The kind where you can't pretend. I went and got the box. It was in the hall closet, behind Garrett's old hunting jacket that I've never been able to give away. A shoebox. The one with the navy blue lid. I brought it back to the kitchen and set it on the table between us. "Open it," I said. Phoebe opened it. Inside were canceled checks, a lot of them. Some bank statements, some receipts, a few notes I'd kept over the years. "What is this?" she said. "This is everything I gave your mother and your father in the last 28 years, I said. "Every check, every wire transfer, every time I co-signed a loan, every time I paid for something they couldn't or wouldn't pay for themselves. The down payment on the house in West Hartford, Royce's dental school loans, the second round after the first round defaulted. Your brother's stint in that wilderness program in Utah, your mother's car, twice, your sister's wedding dress, the vacation in Tuscany that they never paid me back for, the IRS settlement in 2011. Phoebe was looking at the papers, her hands flipping slowly through. "How much?" she said. I'd added it up that afternoon. Before the dinner, before any of it, $367,400. She put her hand over her mouth. That's why she did it tonight, I said. She isn't worried about my mind. She's worried about her mortgage. They refinanced last year. Royce's practice has been losing patients for 2 years, and she's been counting on this house, on the equity, on the bank accounts. She told her brother last Christmas, she told a real estate friend in October, she's told everyone except me. And tonight was the move. Get me declared incompetent. Get herself appointed guardian. Sell the house. Move me to one of those memory care places in Newington that costs $8,000 a month, paid out of my own assets, until there's nothing left, and I die in a beige room. Grandma. It's all right, I said. I've known for a while. I just didn't know it was going to be tonight. Phoebe was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "What are you going to do?" I looked at her. My granddaughter, the girl who used to come to my house every Saturday when she was 8, who learned to make biscuits standing on a chair in this kitchen, who drove 3 hours each way during her sophomore year of college to be with me the week after my hip surgery. What I should have done years ago, I said. The next morning, I called my attorney. Her name is Adelina Voorhees, and she's been my lawyer for 22 years. She handled Garrett's estate. She handled my will. She'd told me, the last time I'd seen her in 2019, that I needed to update everything, and I'd put it off. People my age, we put off the things we don't want to think about. We pretend we have time. I went to her office at 10 o'clock on Black Friday. Tabitha had called 4 times that morning. I didn't answer. I sat in Adelina's office and I told her everything. The Thanksgiving dinner, the fake doctor, the phone calls to Dr. Pemberton, the recording, the guardianship petition, the $367,000 over 28 years. Adelina listened without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set her pen down and she said, "Eulalie, I have to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Yes. Do you want to press charges?" I'd thought about it all night. I'd lain awake until almost 4 in the morning thinking about it. I want to know my options. She told me. Identity fraud, federal. Attempted fraud against the elderly, both state and federal. Forgery if the petition had been filed with my name on it. Conspiracy if Royce had helped, and he certainly had. 5 to 15 years per count depending. Substantial fines. A permanent record. And if I don't press charges, then we still revoke every power of attorney. We rewrite your will. We set up a trust. We can put protections on your accounts. We can flag your medical records. We can send a cease and desist with the recording attached. We can make it impossible for her to try this again, with you or with anyone else. I sat there for a while. I want her to know what she did, I said. I don't think I want to send her to prison. She's still my daughter, even if she stopped acting like it. But I want her to know that if she ever tries this again, with me or anyone else, she goes to prison. I want it documented. I want it on file. I want her to feel the weight of it every single day for the rest of her life. We can do that, Adelina said. We spent 6 hours in that office. By the end of it, Tabitha was removed from my will. Royce was removed. Their 3 older children were removed, except for Phoebe, who I had never put in but added that day. The house, when I died, would go to Phoebe. The bank accounts, which had Tabitha as a beneficiary in case of my incapacity, were rewritten with Phoebe's name and an independent trustee, my own niece's husband Carmichael, a retired accountant in Vermont who'd never asked me for a dime. I set up an irrevocable trust for Phoebe. Not enough to ruin her, not so little it was insulting. Enough to pay off her nursing school loans and put a down payment on a small house, with the rest released to her at 35. Adelina helped me find a structure where Tabitha had no legal pathway to challenge it. I added a personal letter to be opened only after my death. I won't tell you what's in it. It's between me and my daughter and the woman I once thought she'd grow into. Adelina also drew up the cease and desist. It went out by certified mail on Monday. Attached was a notarized copy of the audio recording, transcribed, a copy of the call log to Dr. Pemberton, a statement from Margie, the receptionist, a list of the criminal charges that could be brought, with the relevant statutes cited. The letter informed Tabitha and Royce that all access to my person, my home, and my finances was permanently revoked, that any further contact attempting to influence my legal or medical decisions would be considered harassment, that the materials documenting the fraud would be held in escrow with my attorney to be released to law enforcement automatically in the event of my death under any circumstance Adelina deemed suspicious, or in the event of any future attempt by Tabitha to claim guardianship, capacity, or interest. It was, Adelina said, the most thorough document she'd ever drafted in her career. Tabitha called me on Tuesday, crying, begging, saying it wasn't what it looked like, saying Royce had pushed her into it, saying she'd been under so much stress that the practice was failing, that they were losing the house, that she'd panicked. I let her talk for 20 minutes. I didn't say anything. When she finally ran out of words and there was just her breathing on the line, I said, "You are still my daughter. I will love you until the day I die, because I don't know how not to. But I will not see you, I will not speak to you, and I will not pretend that what you did was anything less than what it was. You tried to take my life, not my body, my life, the remainder of it, the shape of it, and you wanted to do it in a way that would make me feel crazy while it happened, so I doubt my own mind while you strip me bare. That is the cruelest thing one human being can do to another. And you did it to me." She was sobbing. "Goodbye, Tabitha." I hung up. I sat at the kitchen table for a while. The house was very still. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the clock in the hallway ticking, the wind moving the bare branches of the maple tree in the front yard. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat at the kitchen table and I drank it slowly. I didn't cry. I cried enough already years ago for the daughter she might have been. There were no tears left for the daughter she'd become. The next few weeks were quiet. Then they got loud. Tabitha, after she realized I wasn't going to fold, started a different campaign. She called my sister. She called my nephew. She called 2 of my old friends from the school where I taught. She told a different story to each one. To Dorinda, she said I was being manipulated by Phoebe. To my nephew, she said I'd fallen under the influence of a predatory attorney. To Mrs. Halloran from down the street, who I've known since 1974, she said I was refusing medical care and she was beside herself with worry. Mrs. Halloran came over with banana bread on a Wednesday afternoon. She sat in my kitchen and she asked me, gently, if I was all right. I told her the whole story. I let her listen to the recording. I showed her the cease and desist. She left without finishing her tea, drove straight home, and told her husband, who told the man across the street, who told his wife, who is in the same bridge club as my niece-in-law, and within 10 days half of Bristol, knew exactly what Tabitha had tried to do. She stopped calling people after that. Phoebe came over on Sundays. We'd cook together. She was quiet for the first few visits. Then one Sunday in early December, while we were rolling out dough for chicken pot pies, she said, "Mom called me last night. Said you'd brainwashed me. Said you were turning me against the family." "What did you say?" I said, "Mom, I'm 23 years old. Nobody's brainwashing me. I just have eyes." I laughed, real laughter, the first I'd had in weeks. "She said she's going to cut me off," Phoebe said. "Out of the will, off the family group chat, the works." "Will that hurt you?" She thought about it for a minute. "A little." "Yeah, it's still my mother. But not as much as I thought it would. I think I already knew. I just didn't want to know I knew." I reached over and put my flowery hand on top of hers. "Sweetheart," I said, "there's a kind of family that's blood, and there's a kind of family that's choice. The first one you don't get to pick. The second one, you do. And what I learned, very late in life, is that the second one matters more. She nodded. She didn't say anything for a while. We finished the pies. We put them in the oven. She made coffee. While we were waiting for the pies to bake, she said, "Grandma, why didn't you press charges? I've been waiting for that question." "A few reasons," I said. "Some of them are good reasons, and some of them aren't, and I'll tell you all of them so you can judge for yourself." I sat down across from her at the table. "The first reason is that I don't believe in prison for people who can be stopped without it. Your mother is a thief and a liar, but she's not a danger to strangers. She's a danger to me, specifically, and I've removed myself from her reach. The cease and desist, the recording, the documentation Adelina has on file, those are a kind of leash. As long as she stays away, the leash stays slack. The minute she pulls on it, she goes to federal prison. That's enough for me." "Okay. The second reason is harder. I held her in my arms when she was 8 pounds, 2 ounces. I taught her how to read. I sat by her bed when she had pneumonia in 1979, and the doctor told me she might not make it through the night. I cannot, even now, send her to prison. Not because she doesn't deserve it. Because I can't. I'm not made that way. And I want you to understand that this isn't weakness, sweetheart. It's the last gift I have to give a daughter who threw away every other gift I ever gave her. I'm letting her keep her freedom, even though she tried to take mine." Phoebe's eyes were wet again. "The third reason," I said, "is that I'm 79 years old, and a federal trial would take 3 to 5 years, and I don't want to spend whatever I have left sitting in courthouses. I want to spend it making pies with you. I want to spend it reading the books I've been meaning to read since I retired. I want to drive to the coast in the spring and sit on a bench at Hammonasset Beach and watch the gulls. That's what I want, and I'd rather have that than revenge." "That's not weakness either, Grandma." "No," I said. "It's not. The pies came out perfect. We ate them with vanilla ice cream from the carton, sitting at the kitchen table with snow starting to fall outside the window. Christmas came. I didn't host. I went to Vermont, to Carmichael, and my niece's place, and I spent the holiday with them and with Phoebe, who drove up after her Christmas Eve shift at the hospital. We had ham and scalloped potatoes and a small Charlie Brown tree with hand-strung popcorn. It was the best Christmas I'd had in 15 years. In January, I got a card in the mail. No return address. Postmarked Hartford. Inside was a Polaroid photograph from 1981. Tabitha, at 8 years old, holding a stuffed rabbit she'd named Mr. Bingles. She was missing her 2 front teeth. She was beaming. On the back, in her handwriting, "I don't know how to come back from this. I don't think there's a way. I just wanted you to know I remember her too." I read it twice. I put it in the drawer with the will and the trust and the cease and desist. I didn't write back. Some nights, lying in bed in the dark, I think about that photograph. I think about that little girl with the missing teeth and the stuffed rabbit. I miss her terribly. I will miss her for the rest of my life. But the woman who stood up at my Thanksgiving table with a wine glass in her hand and tried to take my mind away from me, that woman is not the little girl in the Polaroid. And I cannot grieve them as if they're the same person. The maple tree in the front yard lost its last leaf in early December. By February, the snow had buried the lower branches. I'd watch it from my window in the morning, holding my coffee with both hands. The house was quiet. Not the quiet of waiting, the way it used to be. A different quiet. The quiet of a room that's finally been swept clean. Phoebe got the trust paperwork in March. She cried on the phone. She said she didn't know what to say. I told her she didn't have to say anything. I told her to use it well. She said she would. I believed her. In April, on a Tuesday, she came over with a bunch of yellow tulips she'd bought at the farmer's market in West Hartford. She put them in the cut glass vase that had been my mother's. She stayed for dinner. We ate spaghetti and watched a movie. She fell asleep on the couch, and I covered her with the afghan my grandmother had crocheted in 1958. I sat in the armchair across from her and watched her sleep. The light from the lamp was soft and yellow. The clock on the mantel ticked quietly. Outside, the spring was beginning. Crocuses were up. The maple tree had buds the size of my pinky nail. I thought about the long arc of a life. The way you spend so many years giving and giving, hoping the people you give to will become what you imagine them to be, the way some of them do and some of them don't. And you don't always get to know which is which until it's almost too late. And I thought about the strange grace of being 79 years old, of having time enough left to set things right, but not so much time that I had to be afraid of the ending. My daughter took a wine glass and a fake doctor and 28 years of generosity and tried to turn them into a key to my front door. She thought I was old. She thought I'd be confused. She thought I'd fold, the way I'd folded so many times before, every time she'd asked for more, and I'd given her more. She underestimated me. They almost always do. But here's what I want anyone listening to know. If you've ever been the parent who gave too much, if you've ever been the grandmother who stayed quiet when you should have spoken, if you've ever felt yourself growing smaller in your own house, just to keep some kind of peace, there is another way. It does not have to end with you being moved into a beige room in Newington. It does not have to end with strangers signing your name. You can stand up, you can speak, you can sign your own paper, you can press record on the little device in your own pocket. You can walk into your lawyer's office on a Friday morning in November and rewrite the rest of your life in 6 hours flat. I am not too old. I was never too old. I just believed it for a while, and then I stopped. Phoebe stirred on the couch. She murmured something I couldn't hear, and then settled. The Afghan rose and fell with her breathing. I turned off the lamp. I went up the stairs slowly, holding the railing the way I always do. I got into bed. I listened to the house. There was no fear in it anymore. Only mine. Only Phoebe's. Only the long, quiet history of the rooms. I closed my eyes. I slept. The next morning, the sun came through the curtains the way it always has, and I made coffee, and I sat at the kitchen table, and I started the rest of my life. I've been turning that Thanksgiving over in my mind for months now, the way you turn a stone in your palm to feel its weight. And what I keep coming back to is this. Nothing my daughter Tabitha did at that table was sudden. It was the harvest of a field she'd been planting for 28 years, and I had been the one holding the watering can. Every check I wrote without asking how it would be repaid. Every excuse I made when she didn't return my calls for weeks at a time. Every silence I kept when Royce talked over me at family dinners. Every time I told myself she was just tired, just stressed, just going through a phase. Each of those moments was a small permission. And small permissions, given long enough, become the architecture of someone's character. I built the staircase she walked up to that wine glass. I have to be honest about that, even when it stings. But here is what the long arc of a life teaches you if you let it. Causes have effects, but so do corrections. The moment I stopped excusing her, the moment I stopped folding, an entirely different future began to assemble itself. Phoebe's hand under the table with that little red light. Adelina's yellow legal pad. Margie's phone call from Dr. Pemberton's office. None of those things would have come to me if I hadn't first decided I deserved them. Help arrives, in my experience, only after you've stopped apologizing for needing it. I want to say something to anyone listening who is older, who is alone, who is tired. Your decency is not a debt you owe the people who hurt you. Goodness without limits is not goodness, it's exhaustion wearing a costume. Real character means knowing where the line sits and standing on it, even when the person on the other side is someone you carried in your own body. That is not cruelty. That is wisdom finally catching up with love. And I want to say something about strength too, because at 79 I have learned that strength is rarely loud. Strength is the steady hand signing a paper. Strength is the quiet phone call to a lawyer on a Friday morning. Strength is choosing not to press charges, not because you can't, but because you've decided what kind of woman you want to be in the years you have left. Tabitha thought my age would be my weakness. She didn't understand that age is a record of every storm you've already survived. There is nothing she could threaten me with that life hadn't already shown me. If there's a thing I'd ask you to carry away from my story, it's this. Watch your patterns. Watch what you tolerate. Watch the small permissions you hand out like candy at a parade. And when the moment comes, and it always comes, do not be afraid to stand up at your own table and say, no further. The room may go quiet, the plates may go cold, but the rest of your life will be yours again. I promise you that.